Hey, Wally, whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good Erev Shabbos.
Good morning. Good Erev Shabbos.
Hasagas Gvul, which is our topic this morning, can be translated as economic competition, if you will. Where does that come from? So let's assume you have two neighbors with adjoining properties, and the way borders are usually marked are with posts in the ground. Up to this post is my property, beyond it is your property. So if a guy in the middle of the night moves the post a few feet into his property, expands his property by removing the border marker, allowing him to plant more crops and reap more benefits, that's called hasagat gavul, removing the boundary. In other words, expanding his capacity to earn money in a way that is considered to be unfair competition, because that's not his property. He removed the border marking, and that's where the expression hasagas gavul comes from. There are a number of discussions in the Gemara about the whole notion of economic competition. There are a number of texts, and then we'll explore what the texts say and how the rabbis have interpreted it and how it goes in terms of contrasting to American law, which allows pretty much unbridled competition, but there are certain limitations. And again, if in one very stark comment, the Gemara says, if you eliminate someone's ability to earn a living, it's like murder. On the other hand, there are other agadic interpretations about not competing with other people's businesses, and it's more of a moral decision in some cases than a legal one. The main discussion in Bava Basra says that if you have people that are fishing in a certain area and they have their nets spread out, you can't put your nets too close to somebody else's net, because fish that might have gone into his net will now go into your net. So this is an advisement. You shouldn't do this. It doesn't say it's usur to do it, but you shouldn't do it. Because similarly, if you have a person operating a mill on one street and somebody else wants to open a mill on the same block, does the original owner have a right to prevent the competitor from opening it up on the same block? There, use the language of Movli, an alleyway. One guy's at one end, one guy's at the other end. Is not considered unfair competition? The guy was there first. So, according to Rav Huna, the original mill owner can prevent the newcomer from setting up shop because it'll interfere with his livelihood. On the other hand, the other guy can say, I'm at one end of the block, you're at the other end of the block. Whoever wants to go to you will go to you. And it's not unfair competition. And the majority of the opinion seem to support that approach, to permit starting a competitive business, as long as there's no direct damage. The fine lines are, how do you determine that direct damage to the newcomer, so to speak? Generally speaking, even though it's a hotly debated topic, the Gemara and the Rishonim reject the restrictions on setting up new fishing nets, and it would seem that initially, at first glance, the halacha sanctions nearly unrestricted free enterprise, if you will. And again, there are distinctions whether the person comes from the same town, is he a newcomer to the community? If the outsider that moves in pays taxes, or some will say that's okay. Others will say, well, no, the local residents, those who were there first, who live in the community, have priority over a newcomer coming in who wants to open up a competitive business. It gets very, very complicated. The Rishonim define unfair competition in a very broad way. You can't open up a new business, for example, right next to another business. Further away, you might be able to do it. There are differences whether it's in an alleyway or in a street, or it's closed at one end. There are technical differences, but most Rishonim would say that local competitors do not have the restriction to open rival businesses. Most people would say that. However, there are others who would take a stricter position, and that the Ramah, for example, has a dispute. And here we get into the fine lines of the halacha. What if the guy who's opening up a new competitive business offers products that are inferior to the original owner? Can that be restricted? And we have a case in the 16th century where there are more ruled between two Italian publishers who both published editions of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah. The first publisher said, he's cutting into my business by publishing another edition. And the Ramah ruled in favor of the first publisher because the second edition was a shoddy edition. It wasn't as good. Paper wasn't good, whatever the print. He ruled against it. So that's adding another ingredient into the whole discussion of what's considered hasagas gevul or not, and whether it would apply. Free enterprise is pretty much ingrained in American culture, and this also applies in many cases in halacha as well. The rabbis seem to be a little bit more lenient, unless it's a very egregious situation. The Rashba, for example, says you may not infringe upon people who are regular customers of a certain business. So he would say you shouldn't put fishing nets near someone else's fishing nets. The Achronim are concerned about profits. What will increase or decrease the profits by the introduction of a new business? And it's interesting, the Chassam Sofer says you can give makos. Actually, give makos to somebody who competes unfairly. So he was very strict about hasagas gevul. Not everybody obviously agrees with the Chassam Sofer, but this argument, this debate. Now, I will mention one footnote to the whole discussion. In the Middle Ages, in order to allow, there were no positions known as community rabbis. The position of rabbi, as we know it, didn't exist until very, very late in the Middle Ages, because those communities that are Talmidei Chachamim and people who were immersed in Torah study didn't need a rabbi. What do you need a rabbi for? If you know the halacha, then you can do your own. You can perform your own marriages. Seder Kedushin doesn't require a third party. You can write your own gittin. You can, if you know how to shecht, if you know how. I mean, you don't need rabbis if you know the halacha yourself. When the level of learning went down, they had to hire a professional rabbi who knew the halacha to organize community life, to build a mikveh, to supervise shechita and kashrus and so forth and so on. So when this practice first began, how do you pay a salary of a rabbi or a person who was called upon before the actual position of rabbi existed to call upon somebody to answer questions, to officiate at certain functions? So there was something called a ma'arufya. A ma'arufya is the equivalent of a monopoly, which means that these guys would sit and learn all day, but they had to make a living. So in order to allow them to make a living and to be available to answer questions, every town gave certain individual Talmidei Chachamim a monopoly in certain businesses, so that he would operate his business for a couple hours during the day. Everybody had to go to him. He'd make enough money to get by for the day. He'd close shop, and then he'd go back to the base medrash. In the 20th century, by the way, this is what actually happened in the town of Radin, where the Chafetz Chaim lived. The Chafetz Chaim was a shopkeeper, the great Chafetz Chaim. And what would happen is, obviously, everybody wanted to buy dry goods from the Chafetz Chaim, which affected the other businesses negatively. So he would only stay open to earn enough money for the day, close shop, so that other people can do business also. But these were limited monopolies in a certain period of time, which would, it doesn't fall into the category of hasagas gvul, of unfair competition, and they wouldn't allow anybody else to open up a competing business to this particular Talmid Chacham. But that was related more to the issue of supporting a person who functioned like a town rabbi, as opposed to the issue of hasagas gvul.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I know you're talking about like businesses, but in this day and age, whether we like it or not, shuls run as businesses to some extent. So is there any halacha thingy about how close one shul can be to another? Because that too could be competitive, and you need to pay a rabbi's salary and keep the lights burning and that kind of thing. Do you want me to retract the question?
No, it's a great question. There are some shuls, fortunately or unfortunately, that are run like businesses, more than places for davening and learning. When it comes to shuls or batei medrash, there is no halacha of hasagas gvul. If there are enough people to support it, again, I know of shuls which are primarily catering halls, and they are really businesses. The shul is an ancillary thing. That's a whole separate discussion. But hasagas gvul would not apply to shuls or to yeshivos or to any place where Torah is being learned. There it wouldn't apply. We're only talking about situations where individual livelihoods are concerned. Hasagas gvul concerns individual livelihood, and it's also important to understand that in America, there's a conflict between halacha and American law. All restrictions against economic activity, what we call hasagas gvul, would violate civil antitrust laws in America. So that's another concept. I mean, I don't know if a guy who wants to open, if you have a Jewish shoe store in town and somebody comes in to open up another shoe store, and if the original owner can claim it's a violation of civil antitrust statutes, and Dina de Malchus or Dina, it becomes very, very complicated. We have interesting shilas. What about the business transaction that takes place when you sell your chametz on Pesach? Where there's been one rabbi who's been doing it for years and years and years, and then a new rabbi comes to town. Can people sell their chametz to the new rabbi? Is this considered hasagas gvul? Again, bearing in mind that the first rabbi didn't get a great salary to begin with, and he may rely on this. Today, most poskim today are very lenient about competition. Rav Soloveitchik was allowed a new pizza store to open in the same area where there was an established pizza store in Bergen County a number of years ago. And the local rabbis at that time, Rabbi Gordon and Rabbi Adler, asked the Rav, who said, no, you could have a new pizza store. In America, he posted there are no restrictions on competition, although he didn't give a reason for it. Now, the RCBC has followed through on this because there were a number of situations in Bergen County where people came in to open up businesses in direct competition to local businesses that had been there for a number of years beforehand, and in fact put them out of business.
Rabbi, what was the reasoning for the heter?
He didn't give a reason for it. He said it just doesn't apply, and unfortunately, a number of businesses has been put out of business because the Hasagas Gevul was not enforced. It's a very thin line. There was in Teaneck a very, very fine dairy restaurant, very nice dairy restaurant. It was the only one of its kind at that time in Teaneck. And when Shelley's opened, they brought it in Torah. How could you have another dairy? We've been here. We live in the neighborhood. And in fact, because it was a high-end restaurant and Shelley's was more of a lower-end type of establishment, they basically put them out of business. They closed shop. And this happened a few times. There was a wonderful, wonderful butcher shop on Cedar Lane, a small guy. But it was the only place you could get bison anywhere in Bergen County. Lovely, lovely guy, French fellow. He was there for many years. And he was in the process of expanding the stop because everybody went there and enjoyed his meat. And then another establishment opened literally across the street, a much bigger establishment, put him out of business because the RCBC held, and still holds, that Hasagas Gevul doesn't apply. Now, even though technically it may not apply, I think sometimes you have to apply seichel to the halacha as well. But it seems to be that today, Hasagas Gevul would only apply if, number one, the new establishment was offering inferior products. Then you could say Hasagas Gevul does apply. Or if the pricing was so low that it would drive all business away from the original businesses. So again, you could offer reasonable pricing and it can be competitive pricing, but you can't go so low to purposely lower your prices until the guy is out of business and then raise prices again. That you can't do. Certain monopolies have to exist. Transportation, telephones, that doesn't apply so much in the area of halacha as far as we're concerned. There is unrestricted competition in Torah education that we already mentioned. However, there's one interesting area of business. There are certain areas in New York which are known as, I call a business district, shall we say. You have a business district in New York for flowers in Lower Manhattan. You have a diamond district. Within these business districts, many, many different businesses of the exact same type operate, and there's no Hasagas Gevul either. It's considered a commercial zone. So it's a very complex issue, many, many variables. There are a number of unresolved halachic disputes and changing business conditions. And different Batei Din may rule differently depending some of these machloks and how you interpret it. But by and large, unless the competitor is doing something that is grossly unfair by lowering prices to the point where he's not even making a profit just to drive somebody out of business, or the product that is being offered is an inferior product, then the rabbis can say you can't open up your store. But if it's competition that is fair competition, offering a similar product, then they would say Hasagas Gevul doesn't apply. That right now is the position of the RCBC in our community. I don't know if it should be a blanket heter. Cases have to be reviewed. I think a case can be made, although the RCBC differs, between people who are residents of the community and people coming from the outside. There are people who own many, many businesses in many communities, and they open up chains in different areas, where versus a local guy, single store owner, who's been there for many years, who lives in the community. I think there is room to rule in favor of Hasagas Kavul, in favor of the local resident versus outsiders that come in. But again, this is why you have a base in that issues it. The topic is still debated, and different Batei Din will come to different conclusions. I think personally, my own personal opinion, for whatever it's worth, I think it's a mistake for any Bezdin to give an unequivocal statement that Hasagas Kavul doesn't apply Bisman Hazeh. I think that is a wrong psak, although I'm not a posek and I'm not a member of the ICBC, but I think that's an error. I think in most cases, Hasagas Kavul may not apply, but I think if an issue comes up, it has to be evaluated because there are external factors that might apply, such as a people who lives in the community, who's been here for a long time, et cetera, competitive pricing and so forth. These are not simple issues, and people's livelihoods are at stake, which is why, again, going back to the original notion of Hasagas Kavul, by moving the border marker and planting a few more acres or a few more feet of crops, enabling you to make more money, it's unfair because it's not really on your you moved the border marker, you extended the potential of your business beyond that which is legally or ethically permissible. And I think those are issues that we have to consider. But be aware that in most cases today, Hasagas Kavul would not apply, and American competition, I guess, Hina Sofrim Tarba Chochma in that regard too, that there are antitrust laws and civil law. We get into Dina de Malchusa Dina. To what extent does the civil law impact the halacha? If a bezdin rules against a business that they shouldn't be opening up in a neighborhood because somebody else is already there, that guy could sue the bezdin in court, saying it violates antitrust provisions. So these are not simple issues, and you need to have rabbanim who know choshen mishpat well, in consultation with, I guess, observant or learned attorneys who also know labor law as well. That's a brief look at Hasagas Kavul this morning.
Well, if it were applicable in every place, you only have one pizza store, one grocery store, etc.
Well, if it's on the same block, it's more of a problem than if the other end of town.
Right.
You can have multiple pizza shops, but they're not one on top of the other.
Look in Teaneck, within one block, you have 3 pizza shops. Within one block, EJ's, Sammy's, and Poppy's.
Oh.
And you know what? That's to the advantage. First of all, if there's enough business, and I think there is, because they've been in existence for years.
But they are.
It's not really one block.
It is one block. It's one
within
block.
a few blocks. It isn't.
No,
I was just at Poppy's yesterday.
The 3 stores that you mentioned are not just pizza shops.
Right.
What?
The 3 stores that you mentioned are not just pizza shops.
Sammy's is not a pizza shop.
But they all sell pizza. But you
But
know
they
what?
sell many other things as well. You used to have in Teaneck, the first pizza store in Teaneck just sold pizza, nothing else.
But it's to the advantage of the consumer. In certain places over there, they'll sell pizza on certain days for like $5 or $6 less supply. And that's the only reason why they're doing that, is because to kind of get you to come into the store. If there was only one pizza shop, that would never happen. And I said, as long as there's enough business for everybody.
Okay, but that's a key ingredient, you see. The key ingredient is if there's enough demand for the supply, fine. But if you don't have enough people to support 3 pizza stores, then it's an issue.
You know what? When the rabbis make a determination, they should check with somebody who could do a study to find out if there's enough business for everybody.
So because
they haven't the faintest idea if that's true or not. But you can call somebody in to do a study and figure out if that can be done or not.
In some cases they will do that, and in the case that I'm thinking of in Teaneck, they didn't do that, and as a result, a very fine restaurant had to close up. Unfortunately,
more than one. There was a butcher shop that had to close up too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, And talking about people's livelihoods here, and these are serious issues. Anything else?
Which
Okay.
store are you referring to that closed?
Doesn't matter.
There was a dairy restaurant,
How many years ago?
25, 30 years ago.
Before my time.
Way, a long time ago.
Right.
It was a very nice dairy restaurant. And when Shelley's opened up, it drove them out of business.
Right.
And Shelley's is first now just reopened. They were closed for a while. All right.
Have a great Shabbos.
Everybody,
Stop.
patronize your Jewish stores in Bergen County.